Hey, what's up guys? I'm Rob Richards, filming again for supplementsworld.com here at Global Fitness. And on today's video, we're gonna take a really deep look at the chest. In particular, the muscles that make up the region of the chest, the function of the chest, and also a few exercises that will allow you to really focus on the areas of the chest that you want. Let's start off with having a look at the actual muscles that make up the chest. And believe it or not, there's 4 in total. I think we're all familiar with the large fan-shaped muscle here of the Pectoralis Major. And to start things off, there's 2 areas of this chest based on the insertion and the origin points on the body. If we consider the upper region of the chest, this is still the Pectoralis Major, but you can see here, if I move the label out, that the upper region attaches to the clavicle bone here, down just kind of a little bit higher than the midpoint on the upper arm bone, the humerus. So the upper portion of the chest here is slightly different from the main width, the main mass of the chest, as well as the lower region, which is called the sternal head. And the reason for that is all about how and where that muscle attaches on the bone. If we look at the top portion of the chest, in fact, if I move this diagram out the way, we'll place it just there. Think of the chest as 2 large muscles, if you like. The upper region of the chest and that midsection. We can see here the upper attaches to the clavicle. The midsection attaches more to the central chest bone, the sternum. Knowing where the upper region of the chest attaches and that main midsection of the chest is really important to know, especially when we start to look at some of the exercises later on and how they target and work particular areas of the chest. But more on that later. Let's carry on for now looking at the muscles that make up the chest. You might just see 2 more here, the pectoralis minor and the serratus anterior. There's actually one more hidden away just here, subclavius. It's a cylindrical type muscle that's attached really to the upper rib and also to that clavicle area. That really just helps us adduct and bring the arm in across the body. The 2 muscles that we're really focusing on when we weight train are the large pectoralis major and also the serratus anterior. The minor muscle, the smaller muscle of the chest that sits under that large one, really just assists with keeping that arm down at the side and also when we do exercises like flies. But as far as developing both mass and real strength and power, it's this large fan-shaped muscle, the pectoralis major, that we need to keep in mind. Right, now that we've taken a lot of the muscles out of the way, we can really just see how that top chest muscle, the pectoralis major, attaches to the bone structure. Like I said, the upper portion of the chest, the clavicle, down to the arm bone, and then that big section of the chest, the one that we really hit with a lot of the exercises, is attached mainly to the sternum. This really comes into play when we consider the big movements such as the press and also dumbbell flies as to how to really work particular areas of the chest. But before we get to that, let's consider the main function of the chest. And really, this is to close the arms in like this, kind of like a big bear hug. So looking at dumbbell flies or cable flies later on will really work the chest as it's designed to do. The big press movement, yes, whilst it works mostly the pectoralis major, you also bring into play some of the front deltoid and the triceps, as well as the back. So a note on back training as well, just because of the placement and the attachment of the chest muscles, you really do need to work the back to develop a strong chest as well as a back. Both go hand in hand. You can't have a great chest without a great back. And we'll look at some of the exercises that can be performed later on to really enable you to do this, especially when you start combining exercises such as dumbbell flies with chin-ups. Speaking of stretchers, just because of the attachment, the insertion around the humerus, that bone there for the arm, a lot of the chest gets worked when we're opening out the arms. So it makes sense when performing exercises such as your bench press, dumbbell presses, and especially dumbbell or cable flies, is to allow a full range of motion. Basically, you want to go as far as you can to stretch and open out that chest, which enables a larger range of motion, enabling you to focus on that deep contraction at the top of each rep. Speaking of the function of the chest, there's really 3 key movements that the chest assists in, and that is raising of the arm like so. You have adduction, like flapping the wings of a bird, and then also rotation of the humerus. Think about an arm rest or 2 when you're doing this movement. Basically, we want to incorporate all three of those movements throughout our chest workout to ensure that we're fully working an overall development of the chest muscle. Now, let's think of this for a second. If we put that large pectoralis major back onto our body, we can break this into 4 quadrants. If you think of it as the upper portion of the chest, the lower region of the chest, as well as the outer and the inner section. And there's a number of different exercises and training techniques that will enable you to focus on each area. Now, let me start off with this. We all have slightly different bodies. This is due to genetics as well as how we train. So take a very real look at your physique, because if you're following someone online, they may be focusing more on weak point training, whereas if you're just starting out, your goal really should be to focus on the big basics, building mass, strength, and power before you start to think more about conditioning and detail. You're not just working one particular muscle. Take the bench press, for example, the king of all upper body exercises. You're working all of the muscles that we've spoken about today, but because of the angle at which you're performing that, it's pretty much sectioned across the main portion here. You're not bringing too much into play the upper region unless you start to increase the incline of the bench. So with that being said, let's have a look at exercises for the upper region of the chest first. And for this, you can't go wrong with the incline. Whether it's performed with either a barbell or dumbbells, which actually allow for a longer range of motion, I would suggest starting off on barbell presses. You can do this on a fixed incline, or like I show in this section, you can actually use an incline bench, lift the weight up yourself, get into position, and then perform that. By doing this, you're enabling a lot more of the synergistic muscles, so muscles like the pectoralis minor and also that serratus anterior, and it allows you to really focus on strength and power with that. But that's more of an advanced technique. For now, stick with your incline barbell presses, and if you really want to focus more on that inner area of the chest here, try a more narrower grip. Instead of taking a slightly wider than shoulder hand grip, take it about shoulder width grip, still with an overhand grip, thumbs locked around. Therefore, as you lower the bar down with a tighter grip, as you push up, your chest is already somewhat compacted. You can focus even more on that contraction and the squeeze up at the top. What about the lower section of the chest? Well, we've considered incline. How about decline? Well, let me offer an alternative to decline. You see, when performing a decline press, you're putting a lot of unnecessary stress on the upper region of your front shoulder. In fact, when any press movement occurs, you're also engaging your front anterior deltoid and your triceps. There's a couple of ways that we can lessen their involvement to focus more on the chest. This really comes down to 3/4 reps. Take your flat bench or even an incline press and think about performing that movement with only 3/4 of that full range of motion. Therefore, you're not fully bringing into your triceps and your anterior deltoid at the top of that movement, so you can focus more on just training the chest and exhaust that without relying on the anterior deltoid and the tricep. That lower region of the chest, a great alternative exercise to pressing on a decline bench is actually performing parallel bar dips, which, typically is aimed towards the triceps, but by tilting forwards at the waist, you bring in a lot of those more inferior muscles of the chest, more deeper on the surface, and also those under pectoralis minor, especially with how deep you can go compared to that of a decline press. So just to summarize, upper portion of the chest, get those incline barbell presses and dumbbell presses in. For the lower region, yes, you can do a decline press with barbell or dumbbell, but don't forget about the parallel bar dip, leaning forwards at the waist. You can also add some weight on either between the knees with the dumbbell or with a weight belt, adding additional poundages on. So that's the upper and the lower region of the chest. What about affecting more the outer portion and the inner, which is especially vital if you're looking to get ready for that competition or photo shoot, or really you just want to show a fully developed chest? Well, with this one, we can think about the placement of our hands, especially on a barbell. Take a wider grip. Sure, you can't manage as much weight, but like I said, this is more about specialized weak point training rather than your initial basic fundamental exercises where you might be looking at more mass, power, and size. So a wider grip, incline or flat bench, and focus on only about the first 3/4 of that range of motion instead of locking out the arms up at the top. And then to focus on the inner section of the chest, simply narrow your grip a little bit more inside that width of your shoulders so that as you press up, you already have the chest muscles engaged before you get to the top. Therefore, you can fully focus on squeezing and contracting them. Another area for the inner chest is with dumbbell flies, especially with cables, performing these in the old-fashioned way of the cable crossover. Putting one arm down over the other allows just that little bit extra range of motion that you're not going to get when performing with dumbbells or even a machine. Now, whereas the large exercises such as your bench press and various dumbbell presses and flies will allow you, certainly early on in your training, to develop some mass, power and size in the large pectoralis major, when you want to start focusing on some more detail and really fine-tuning your physique, certainly if you're looking at getting up on stage or for photo shoots, you want to start thinking about more of the underlying muscles, especially with that serratus anterior. These are those finger-like muscles that wrap around just above the abdominal section there and just below the pectorals that really show that you've fine-tuned your physique and you've got that conditioning and detail down. And for this, you can't do much better than the dumbbell pullover. Think about this, if you are training for the likes of a competition or just more of a well-rounded, developed physique, you want to ensure that you have a well-developed chest, but also it's proportional and you have enough thickness and density in the upper region. And for this, you have to do exercises like the dumbbell pullover, mainly because of its thoracic expansion, its effect to increase the diameter of your rib cage. There's several different exercises that you can perform to really target and work the serratus anterior. And these consist of the dumbbell pullover, performed either lengthways or across the bench, a hanging serratus crunch, which is kind of like doing a chin-up in the early stages, but instead of lifting yourself up, you're simply engaging, contracting those finger-like muscles just to shift your body weight to the left and to the right. Really great exercise, takes a lot of practice though. And then also your rope pull-down, performing it with both arms or a single arm, but not quite like the way that you perform an abdominal crunch. For this one, keep the arms straight and just focus on pulling that rope down. You'll feel the intercostals and the serratus anterior crunch down and contract. So really there's three fundamental movements of the chest. You have a press, you have a fly, and also a pullover. My recommendation would be focus on the big muscle groups first, get your bench presses with barbell, lift as much weight as you can, rep range 8 to 10, and then start to work your way down to more inner and outer portions using dumbbell flies, cables, as well as various techniques such as that 3/4 of the way up and a closer, more narrow grip to focus on that full extension of the arm and get that deep contraction to focus on the inner section. Finally, if you do have some weak areas that you really want to work on and develop, think about priority training, so incline presses first off, then move on to your flat bench presses, and also the decline, those parallel bar dips to really work the lower section of the chest if you're uncomfortable or you don't like using those decline presses as much. Finally, with chest, as like any other muscle, it takes time to really build out and develop. So if you are just starting out on your training journey, think about the big mass building exercises first. Don't try and work in everything at once. Dedicate 3 to 6 months to improving your strength and working on your overall mass and size before you then start to think about the smaller, more detailed focus training. All right guys, that wraps up the end of our video today, taking a look at the muscles of the chest. If you'd like to find out more information about this particular video or any other muscle groups, you can read my full article over at supplementsworld.com or by simply clicking on the link below. With that being said, like the video, leave a comment and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Be sure to stick around for next month's video when we'll be looking at more muscle groups down to the bone. I'm Rob Richards. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Take care.